Hello, everybody. This is the asynchronous assignment for those who were not able to make it to the seminar last week. This is a combination for the year one and year two candidates. So if you are a year one candidate, you might be hearing some things that don't necessarily apply to you, and vice versa for the year two candidates. It might be things that you've already heard or experienced from last year. Nevertheless, there is some information that corresponds to both years. So just keep that in mind as we move it along. So just a couple of things. I am Sal Sandoval, the induction TOSA for PGS, and Hans Koffel, the induction specialist. You may recognize some of the faces there in the middle as this our PGS, ongoing PGS staff, including your support teachers. So a couple of things that we'll be going over today. Some of this doesn't apply because it's things that had occurred if you were able to make it in person. So we're going to have a program design, some of which you may have heard or maybe reiterated from your orientation if you attended either during Summer Academy or during our one that we held virtually a few weeks back. We'll go over briefly the CSTPs, so we're not going to read them in detail, but just kind of comparing a little bit the newest 2024 version as compared to the old 2009 version. The point of this is to go over the ILP, the individual learning plan, a little more in detail. And if you are year two, we'll be going over a little bit of the enhancements or changes that may have occurred, slight as they might be. And then also briefly talk about the Google Classroom. So there's a little activity that we did in person, so we'll kind of skip over that a little bit. So this might be some of the things that you have heard already mentioned for the orientation, but we do have seminars that will be ongoing. This is the first one. We're still kind of in the works how many there might be for the remainder of the school year, depending on the need. So we'll kind of be on the lookout for more information there and what that might look like. Within your induction experience through PGS here, you will be receiving guidance in the creation of an ILP, or individual learning plan, per commission requirements using what's called the cycle of inquiry model. And that guidance comes in the form of your induction mentor, or here at PGS within our USD, we call those support teachers. And the reason they are referred to as support teachers is because the support teachers support not only induction candidates, but also those who are new to the district who may already have a clear credential. So the induction mentor title wouldn't necessarily work for them. So just to kind of give you an idea that you'll hear those terms used interchangeably, as they are essentially the same thing. And then also, in case you have any friends or family from a different district who may refer to their induction mentor, and you might be thinking, well, I don't have one. You do. They sometimes are referred to as support teachers. The ILP, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail, which follows the cycle of inquiry model, does have requirements that require you to write different things on the form itself. One of those things being professional development. So we like to let you know early and often that those professional developments have to be attended by you, sought after in some capacity. And so there are diverse opportunities for that, not only from PGS, but from the district, possibly from your site itself. So PGS does provide professional developments. As a matter of fact, a few have already been in the works when it's fully developed and will be held here shortly. As a matter of fact, after I'm done here, I will be posting a flyer for that in the Google Classroom just to kind of give you an idea of what that is. So obviously take advantage of those. The idea of the professional developments is for you to seek them and attend those that are in some form related to your area of focus or to your goal for your ILP, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We do meet twice yearly as a credential meeting, so as a second year, we will be meeting at the end of the first half of the school year to go over your first ILP. So as a year two, you are a candidate, you are required to complete 2 ILPs. As a year one candidate, you're required to complete 1 ILP. So that mid-year meeting that we'll be having for the year two is to go over the first ILP and see how that went, your experience, etc. And if you are a first-year candidate, that mid-year is more of a check-in with you to see how progress is going, to see how pacing is going, to see if there's anything that you may need support on, if you're falling behind, if you need more help, if something is unclear. So that's kind of what that is. At the end of the year, we have an end of the year meeting as well, either to see how your year went and for the completion of your first ILP, or for your second year to see how the last 2 years have gone for you, and to as a culminating activity, if you will, for your induction experience. We will be using the newest version of the CSTPs, the 2024 version. So in case you're wondering, oh, I want the 2025 version, there's no such thing. So the last time the CSTPs, or the California Standards for the Teaching Profession, were used was back in 2009. That's the revision that they had, and those were the same ones that were used. And then for this school year is the first year where we're able, when I say we, I mean all the districts and all the induction programs are able to now transition into the newest version, 2024 CSTPs. If you come from a credentialing program over the last couple of years, you may remember what's called the TPEs, the Teacher Performance Expectations. Those were the those were revised first about 5 years ago or so. And so these CSTPs are kind of based off of those revisions that were created, just to kind of give you some context there. In the process, the opportunities to reflect on increased competency towards that mastering of the CSTP is had by not only by yourself on an island, but along with your support teacher in something called the continuum of practice, which I'll show you an example of in a little bit. But just kind of to go over a little bit of the differences from the 2009. Again, we're not going to look over everything, and feel free to pause this and take a look at this. We also have copies of these documents within Google Classroom that you're welcome to look at. But again, essentially the key shift from 2009 to 2024 is prioritizing equity, holistic view of learning, and enhanced family engagement, as well as social emotional learning. So some of those you may have heard or experienced a little of, depending on, and you can again kind of do a deep dive here, some may have existed in some capacity in the old 2009 version, some maybe not at all. And so now with the newest version, language has changed. Additional elements have been added in order to fulfill some of these kind of focuses, if you will. So again, if this is new to you anyway, it doesn't really change too much, but just thought we would let you know. Now, down to the brass tacks here. This is a copy of a year 2 individual learning plan. So if you're a year 1 candidate, it will look very similar, with a couple of exceptions. So the top is essentially just kind of your context for you as an individual, so that your name, obviously your support teacher, site, etc. Your year in induction, whether it's your first year or second year, and your ILP numbers. So that's ILP numbers either 1, 2, or 3, depending on where you are in the process. And if you've come from a different induction program, maybe you finished a year and now you're coming into your second year, year in induction would be 2 because this is your second year, even though it's not within RUSD. And then ILP number is going to be however many ILPs you've had here within RUSD. We have added, so this will be new, the check-in dates here at the top, just to kind of give you an idea of, or to remind you, so you don't have to look elsewhere, on when those check-ins are due within Google Classroom and what is entailed in that. So for example, for the year 2 candidate on 9/22, the plan section is due, and excuse me. And for the year 2s, no, I'm sorry, that was year 2. And then, so for year 1, the plan section is October 13th. So your ILP version for the year 1 will have these same check-in boxes, but you'll have more, and also the dates obviously will be different. So don't let this confuse you for today. So for that first check-in date, this is why we have this here in this bold section, or I'm sorry, highlighted section, box 1 through 4. I'm not sure what this X is here. That was a mistake. Will be due. So where it says plan here in red, box 1, 2 is here, 3 and 4 are what's due. So in box 1, you will be linking what's called a triad meeting agenda. And as a matter of fact, you won't be doing that. Your support teacher will be doing that. If you haven't already spoken to your support teacher about what a triad meeting is, they will reach out and talk to you about that. That's when you have a meeting alongside your site administrator, who's usually your evaluator, and your support teacher. So they'll talk to you more detail about that, and so they will link that there for you. Here's an area here where if you'd like to briefly kind of talk about what your focus area will be, you can do that there in a very unofficial way. The CSTPs at a glance is a document there where you can open and it kind of shows you all the CSTPs on one shot, kind of in this one pager, which I'll show you here in a second. Box 2 also has that same link. However, these are hyperlinked for each of the individual elements. And again, we'll talk about that. And those hyperlinks will then send you to what's called the continuum of practice. And then that is where you will have a conversation with your support teacher on where you think you fall on this continuum. Again, I'll show you that in a second. The important thing being, and we've added this piece here to rename it with your last name and element number. That way it's pretty consistent on how it gets labeled, and so we know whose document it is and what it is. And then also what's not written there, which should probably add, is for you to make sure that you give us rights to be able to view the document. So as you share that, make sure that we are able to view it so we don't have to ask for permission for that. Box 3 is where you actually write the goal itself. So I would argue that box 3 and 4 are some of the more important pieces of the ILP. There's a frame question here for you. If you find this helpful, by all means, go ahead and use it. If you find it confusing, go ahead and write your own question and your own kind of style of writing if you wish, and that's perfectly fine. Just for the record, these blue colors here are not links. Those aren't hyperlinks. So just to give you an idea, there's just for you to write in whatever thing you want to write in place of that to make the sentence frame, the sentence actually makes sense. But again, if you find it more confusing than helpful, feel free to kind of ignore that. Box 4 is what's called the anticipated measurable outcomes. I think this is what gives candidates the most headache or confusion. And this is the piece where you will kind of ask yourself, like, how will you know if your goal from box 3 is being met? Is there a certain amount of time that you're giving? And how do you know if that goal is being met? And usually it's some sort of quantitative number or measurable thing that you can see. And you will write down some, again, it could be a percentage, it could be a fraction, it could be whatever it is. And not necessarily, it could be qualitative in nature, but it has to be some way where you have some measurable way of doing it, whether they're surveys or actual test scores. So discussing with your support teacher is important in that, and coming up with creative ways might be necessary. And this is something that as you move along, as the weeks go by, possibly even a month or so, you might come to realize, you know what, I want to change what I want to measure or what I want to see in terms of student outcome, and that's perfectly fine. You can go back to box 4 and change what you think you want to measure. So keep that in mind, because sometimes we just don't know. I won't talk about this much, but this is a document that's on your Google Classroom under resources. It's called the ILP matrix. It's kind of like a rubric, reading it from left to right, just to kind of give you a helpful idea of what you have within the ILP and how to what degree certain things are being met or hit. And again, this is something that we use not as a rubric to grade per se, but just kind of a standard of like checking in on where you are with what you're writing and what you're reflecting on. If something is blatantly missing, this document kind of let you know that, and then you can go ahead and kind of do something about that. So that's just for your information to read up on. I mentioned the Google Classroom is where you can find the, excuse me, matter of fact, let's go to the Google Classroom. Here you go. So this is the Year 1 Google Classroom, where you can find the classworks. The ILPs itself fall under the actual classwork category. For you, what you are looking at might look different than what it looks like here, because you are not a teacher on the Google Classroom. You're actually a student. This is where the assignment is for the Google Classroom, for the ILP, excuse me. Your support teachers, along with myself and Hans, are teachers on this, just to kind of give you an idea. but that's where that will be housed. There's instructional videos and things that will be there. Again, this is the teacher version, so this might look different for you. Additional program resources are here, the handbook, etc. The early completion option, very similar. We put the dates up here kind of for your information. Year 2 as well. Similar in nature, although it's slightly different because of the needs. But that's where that exists. If we can go back to ILP itself, I will pull up a year 1 version just to kind of compare the two. It's a little bigger. Notice that there are more check-in dates for year 2 because it's the one ILP for the entirety of the year. So what I wanted to look at is that CSTP at a glance that I mentioned. We'll open up the continuum of practice links instead. It's basically the same document. Matter of fact, I already have it open, so I'll just go here. The same document, the only difference being is that each of the elements are hyperlinked. And so I do want to talk about that briefly. So if you, let's say after reading the CSTPs, you align CSTP 2A with your goal, or the other way around, you have a goal and you've aligned it to 2A. So what you're going to do along with your support teacher is click on this, and it will show you a forced copy, which hopefully I can show you here in a second. And what that will do is it will pull up what's called you notice the forced copy here, what's called the continuum of practice for 2A only. So you'll notice the 2A mention here. You will read over the language here on this continuum. When we call it continuum, is because it moves from left to right, almost kind of in a rubric style, from emerging, exploring, applying, integrating, and innovating. And again, reading each of these elements, and then also down here it gives you additional information regarding those. If you, let's say you pick 2A and you thought to yourself, you know what, I think I'm pretty good at this and I fall under integrating or maybe even innovating, your support teacher will probably let you know that's probably not a good idea to pick this, because what we want to do within our ILP is pick something that we're not too good at yet, or something that we're working on. If you feel pretty strong in a particular element, we're going to ask that you maybe don't focus on that for the ILP itself. We want it to be something authentic that you're doing for your own growth. So if you do pick this one and you find that you're at emerging or exploring or something and you want to move on that, then you're going to pick the date and you're going to write down here whatever that date is for the day that you are kind of focusing on, and down here you're going to write evidence as to why. So maybe you say I am in exploring because, and then you write additional things. And what we ask you is look at the language, see what they expect you to do, and see what is the ideal, if you will, and then base it off that a little bit. Obviously, you can give examples of your time within the classroom, or maybe how you're falling short or what you can work on. And the one thing we also like to say is think about the language for the next. So let's say you were at exploring, and look at the language and apply it and see what it might take to improve or to move over to the right on that scale. And maybe write about that a little bit as well. And once you've done that, what I was referring to for the sharing is if you go over to the share document, either make this live for everybody who's in RUSD, or you can literally put Hans and myself on the document along with your support teacher for us to be able to view the document. So that's what was meant by that. So let's go back to the slides here. So I did mention the check-in dates prior. So just a couple words of notes on this. And within Google Classroom, the language that they use is the words like assignment, due date. It shows things as missing, etc. What we want to emphasize is this is not a gotcha type thing or a pass and fail type thing where either if it's late it's wrong or something like that. This is an ongoing process, and the whole point we have these check-in dates, and we don't like to call them due dates, is just to have some sort of a skeleton, some sort of a pacing guide for you so that you don't fall behind. And because if you do leave things for the last minute, it could be overwhelming. It could be something that's hard to get out of in terms of, like, digging a hole or something. But if you follow these things and you follow these conversations with your support teachers, you'll find that that it should be fruitful, and it also gives us as program staff the opportunity to provide you feedback on things that are written on your ILP. We'll have questions if something doesn't seem clear. If something seems to be missing, we might ask you for more information. Um, and so these check-ins, if they're not complete, if you will, for that section, we do ask that you communicate that with us, and maybe what a plan will be in terms of when to finish it. So for example, if a plan section is due on October 13th, and it's not quite ready to be turned in, what we ask is that you give us an email, maybe turn it in anyway with a note saying, this is not complete. Maybe you're waiting on a quiz that you're going to be doing on October 15th. And so it doesn't really make sense to turn it in because there's something that's missing that you want to include in it. Perfectly fine. We just ask that you communicate that so we have some idea of how you're doing and where you're at. So what it is not is a due date that you're going to fail something on, is what we're trying to say with that. Other than that, the kind of next steps and ongoing steps is meeting with your support teacher. Um, Again, we'll talk to you about what that means, but weekly could mean, for whatever reason, whether it's an observation or a lesson planning or trad media, etc. That will be happening kind of differently depending on your need, and then also it could be in person, it could be virtual, etc. Watch for triad meetings to align support with that site administrator, like I said, and your support teacher will give you more information about that. Please ignore these dates because those are incorrect. The plan section for year one is due October 13th, not 9/11, so please ignore that. And then also for your year twos and early completion candidates, the plan section is 9/22, so that part is correct. Other than that, look for any additional things in asynchronous resources and or assignments on Google Classroom. Appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Hans or myself at the email that you see there. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.